All right, so welcome back, Elaine, to the Zoom room for another Art of Living Good live session. As usual, we'll just jump into our email for today. There's a quote with related teaching we'll cover, and that'll lead us nicely to our insert. I think let's do what is the last judgment again, insert 10, and in the lesson, and then there's some of the psychotherapy purpose, processes, and practices supplement to the course, which we'll read. Okay, so share my screen with you. And share my screen, reload. Okay. Something. Okay. Sharing. Share screen. Not sharing yet. Okay. Share screen. All right, so there we go. If you can read that headline quote from Eric Liddell, who was featured in the movie Chariots of Fire. If you ever saw that.
Yes.
You see it, classic.
Yes, I have
British
seen it,
movie.
yeah. If you are not guided by God, you will be guided by something or someone else.
So today's quote by Eric Liddell, who was a Scottish Olympic athlete and a missionary. His story was inspirationally told in the classic 1981 movie Chariots of Fire. States the simple truth that it will be guided through life thought system. So the only choice you have is which thought system you'll choose to guide you through life. As Yeshua tells us over and over in A Course in Miracles, there are only two guides and thought systems that you must choose between in every situation which you call on to make a decision. Fear being the first one, coming from the ego, or belief in separation, and love coming from God. Or an alternative language, fearful awareness of perfect love, a remembrance of which he calls the Holy Spirit in A Course in Miracles, and we call the remembrance of perfect love. So I thought it might be helpful to translate the word God into its alternative form. You can read that alternative quote. If you're not guided by remembrance of perfect love, you'll be guided by something, someone else. Okay, Shinlan's reading, so it's fine. I'll read it. If you're not guided by the remembrance of perfect love, you'll be guided by something, someone else. So we must remember love in always, in all situations, and that remembrance is what will guide us. So the ego speaks first and loudest in the nagging voice of a separate self that constantly seeks pleasure and avoids pain to try and satisfy its desire for more and protect itself from the perceived dangers in the threatening world it's invented. So therefore, desire and fear are two of its primary emotions that are seemingly powerful motivating forces in this world. They drive billions of people every day to work, to earn money, to buy things they think will give them pleasure, boost their fragile self-esteem, and also keep them safe. So they account for most of the world's gross domestic product. However, it should be obvious if you're engaged in the ego's game, pursuing satisfaction and safety from something outside of you in the world that you think is external to you. We've all done that at some point. That this is not a strategy that works. It doesn't bring lasting happiness and peace of mind at all. In fact, quite the opposite, as the Buddha observed 2,300 years before concepts like GDP existed. He noticed that desire for something more than they already had caused people endless suffering. Because desire seems to confirm that you're not happy as you are right now, and you need something outside of you to be happy. Setting up the self-perpetuating system of expectations, and then, of course, the fear that your expectations won't be met. This is what the Buddha called craving and aversion. In his teaching, craving was tanha, aversion was vita. Aversion was sveta. Let's just check that. So, Dvesha, in Pali. Just so we're correct. There's anyone out there who speaks Pali. So it's the craving and the aversion, desire and the resistance. Now, alternative language called craving, desire, aversion, resistance. They will never end as long as you keep believing. So if you believe in and are guided by this thought system, it will be what's known as a consumer in modern economic terms, consumed by your own desire, always seeking to satisfy it through external needs that often involve buying something. But as Esha points out in this line from early in the text, illness is some form of external searching. So therefore, you follow the ego's guidance by constantly seeking for satisfaction outside yourself. Not only will you be mentally ill, you'll also be wide open to be manipulated to make decisions that aren't really your own by clever marketers who know how to play on your desire and fear with their carefully crafted messages. We've just had Christmas, so we know all about the marketing, people trying to get you to buy stuff you don't necessarily want or even need. So these manipulative forces in society are the something or someone else Eric refers to. Right. So marketers would love to make your decisions for you. Governments, various authorities, worldly authorities, all want authority, when actually the true authority is God, which is actually just your own true self. So Eric Liddell refers to these forces in society in today's quote, that your ego accepts as being part of itself, when in truth they are completely opposed to that self that God or love created. Yeah, so listening to the guidance of this that knows that it's perfect, whole, complete, and loved is what Liddell means by being guided by God. By definition, your higher self doesn't believe in, and in fact can't even conceive of, emotions like desire and fear, because it rests in peace and contentment, complete in its own perfect being, and not needing or wanting anything else. That's why it's whole, complete, perfect. So being aware of your true self and letting this higher awareness interpret all your experiences in this world gives you what's called an internal locus of control that makes you field independent. These are Right.
I lost you there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you just lost me. Just lost connection. So let's share the screen again. Didn't lose very much, fortunately. Okay, just share screen. Let's go back here. Where are we? Okay, so just drop that. Computer's not entirely happy with matters. Let's just restart it. It's just Chrome has just dropped for some reason. So just restore the pages. Is that happening? No, I didn't want to restore the pages for some reason. It's just all right. So where was I? Yeah. So these spiritual masters, Yeshua, Socrates, out of the Buddha, Laozi, both lost their lives because they challenged the authorities of the time. They didn't like it. So Socrates was given the choice to leave Athens in ancient Greece or take poison, and he chose to take poison. So effectively, they suicide, but he was forced to. And Yeshua was crucified, as we know. So it's because they threatened the existing order and the status quo. And the status quo, being of the ego, never likes disruption. So you're starting to see why the forces that seemingly control this world, large corporations, governments, and so on, are dead set against your spiritual progress and will do everything possible to tempt you to abandon it, because their power depends on your mind believing in the ego's thought system. Because without your belief in the ego, they would have no power. If no one believes in the ego, the control system based on it would collapse entirely. So it's all about control, and there are mechanisms then of egoic control. What's really behind it all is the ego, or the separate self-concept, and the belief in separation that underpins it. But as Workbook lesson 152 states so clearly, the power of decision is your own. So lessons, the power of decision is my own. Power of decision is your own, and you can, must choose between these alternative thought systems. Self that God created you to be, pure, holy, perfect, and an illusion of a separate self, doomed to continuously crave satisfaction outside itself and fear that its expectations won't be fulfilled for all of its dissatisfying days until it dies. This is the simple choice we all must make in the end. And forgiveness, or letting go of all the blocks that we become aware of arising in our minds in response to people and events that show up in our lives, is the way we consistently make this simple choice. So the theory is simple, but the practice is working challenging, because these blocks can be quite intense. They can be quite difficult. We feel like we've got already stuck in them. They seem like they're impossible to let go of, because the ego is holding on, resists letting go of these blocks for dear life, because the thoughts and emotions. These thoughts and emotions like desire and fear that constitute these blocks are their life. So our individual egos or the separate identities prefer to be enslaved by the matrix, the superego or thought system of separation is made up to imprison us and to rest in freedom and peace and joy in the self that God or love created us to be. It might just be helpful to have a look, given we're talking about the Matrix, there's a video which is a commentary on the movie that gives a summary of what the movie's saying about society. It's also a commentary, it's a social commentary on our current society that's really still, very relevant. In fact, even more so than it was when the movie was made 25 years ago. So I just thought I might just share something with you. So information exercise pack. Yeah, so there's the thing, and what do we want? Sent into hell, what we wanted. All right, so there's the descent into hell. And so here we see at the top level, the idea of separation and the consciousness or ego or belief in separation, if you want to call it in a traditional religious term, Satan, is this idea that you are a separate self. And then that has various consequences. Guilt and sin and individual identity underpinned by guilt and sin, because in order to exist as an individual self, you think you must have destroyed perfect oneness, perfect love. So you have this tremendous guilt at your very existence if you identify with the ego, which creates then a false expectation of punishment appearing real. So at the top of the tree is the super ego that I termed, and then it devolves down to a multiplicity. Okay, so that's just a recap of that. We've looked at that diagram many times before. In your own time, if you want to go and watch the video of the Matrix, it's the social commentary aspect of the hero's journey aspect that this particular video focuses in on. And that leads us nicely into today's session, which we're already in, and the teaching for today from the lesson. And I think let's do insert 10 on what is the last judgment. So any questions on that, Elaine? Hear that? Okay, to go into the last judgment. I haven't done that for a few days. All right, so well, lesson 317. Okay. All right, so you can read what is the last judgment?
Yeah. In the alternative? Or?
I think do it in both for the first one anyway. There's a bit of translation there. Christ's second coming.
Christ's second coming gives the Son of God this gift to hear the voice for God proclaim that what is false, and what is true has never changed. My true self's second coming gives the extension of perfect love this gift to hear the voice for perfect love proclaim that what is false, and what is true has never changed. And this, the judgment, is in which perception ends. And this is the judgment in which perception ends. At first you see a world that has accepted this as true, rejected from a now corrected mind. At first I perceive a world that has accepted this as true, rejected from a now corrected mind. And with this holy sight, perception gives a silent blessing and then disappears, its goal accomplished and its mission done. And with this innocent vision, perception gives a silent blessing and then disappears, its goal accomplished and its mission done.
And then from the top in the alternative.
Yeah. My true self's second coming gives the extension of perfect love this gift to hear the voice for perfect love proclaim that what is false and what is true has never changed. And this is the judgment in which perception ends. At first I perceive a world that has accepted this as true, projected from a now corrected mind. And with this innocent vision, perception gives a silent blessing and then disappears, its goal accomplished and its mission done.
Okay, so what's he saying in this one?
Well, it's about the true self's second coming gives the extension of perfect love this gift to hear the voice of perfect love and to let them know what is false, what is true has never changed. And this is the judgment in which perception ends.
Yeah, so the one final judgment on the world as unreal. This is what the last judgment is. Okay, I'm able to perceive it all as unreal. I don't make exceptions. I see the entire illusion for what it is. So you would have to have this kind of top level perspective here. If we look at the diagram, you understand that really everything comes from one tiny mad idea of separation, and that idea is not true. So therefore, everything the ego has ever thought or said or done, so that's the whole universe of form, time, and space, it is all unreal because that initial thought of separation is unreal. And that's the last judgment. Once you really understand that, and you've really judged against the separation and everything that it entails, that's the last judgment he's talking about, which frees your mind into, again, pure formless awareness of perfect love. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Happy with number one?
Yep.
Go to number two. I think you just read Christ. So Christ will be the true self, and the Son of God is the extension of perfect love. Those are the two translations there. Just read it in the alternative then.
The final judgment on the world contains no condemnation, for it perceives the world as totally unreal, without sin and wholly purposeless, without a cause and now without a function in my true self's sight. It merely slips away into nothingness. There it was born and there it ends as well. And all the figures in the dream in which the world began go with it. Bodies are now useless and will therefore fade away because the extension of perfect love is limitless. So it's saying about the final judgment on this one, which contains no condemnation. That's the main point, no condemnation. So it sees the world as unreal, without sin, without a cause, now without a function. So it just slips away into nothingness. There it was born and there it ends.
Now, I think the key thing here is to realize You're never going to overcome the ego by fighting it.
Mm.
You know, because you fight something, you're saying it's there. The way out of that is to just let it go so that it ceases to be there. And initially, it seems to be there, but as you let go more and more, you realize, well, it had no substance. These were just false thoughts, just beliefs in your mind, which actually have no substance. So they can be let go of. You don't need to fight them to overcome them. You just need to let them go because they're unreal. And that's the Course's approach. And once you've let go of the thought system that drives the whole world and the universe, then the world must follow suit. So if you let go of the idea of separation and the idea of guilt and sin, being a special self, guilt and sin, fear, attack thoughts, accusation, blame, complaint, you let go of all of that, then what remains must just be pure formless awareness and nothing else. That's what he's saying here. Okay, you want to give other comments on paragraph 2? What's it saying for you?
I went through it there. Just got interrupted by a phone call. Yeah. We'll just have to realize that, well, fighting the ego is a waste of time because it's really nothing.
Yeah. So you're fighting an illusion. Of course, that just makes the illusion stronger. If you fight it, it gives it a reality. That's why the Buddha, to go back to teaching just now, he realized that both craving and aversion were part of the ego thought system. You have to let go of it. The aversion is the fighting, the resistance to something, which makes it real. You realize that was as much a part of the egoic thought system as desire. I want something desperately, or I resist something strongly. It's the same thing. He actually called aversion of desire, because you really, when you're avoiding something, you're saying, "I wish it weren't this way," aren't you? I wish it were another way, and that's resistance. So of course, then what you resist persists, and that state of mind maintains until you're willing to let it go. That's the only way out of it. If you either desire it or you try and avoid it, craving and aversion, just keep the ego going. They perpetuate it, which is what the Buddha saw, which is why he institutionalized these as his noble truths. The source of all suffering is desire, the desire for something to be somehow other than what it is. So in other words, what it is not good enough. I want it to change. But when does that change end? It never ends, because it's never going to be good enough. It's always going to be changing. All right, so pointing us here to the end of time. A little glimpse of the end of time, the end of bodies, the end of figures in the dream, the end of the need for a world. All right, so happy to go on to number 3.
Yeah.
Just read that in the original and the alternative. A few things to translate there.
You who believe that God's last judgment would condemn the world to hell along with you, accept this holy truth. I, who believe that the perfect love's last judgment would condemn everyone to victimhood and suffering along with me, can now accept this pure truth.
It's actually part of the same sentence. Never mind.
Right. Yeah, I didn't finish the whole sentence.
Okay, so he splits it
Would
at
right.
the colon.
So I'll just, perfect love's judgment is the gift of its correction of all my errors, freeing me from them and all effects they have seemed to have. To fear God's saving grace is but to fear complete release from suffering, return peace, security, and happiness, and union with your own identity. To fear perfect love's freeing awareness is only to fear complete release from suffering and return to peace, security, happiness, and union with my own identity. Read it from the top.
Yeah, I'll read it from the top.
I who believed that perfect love's last judgment would condemn everyone to victimhood and suffering along with me, can now accept this pure truth. Perfect love's judgment is the gift of its correction of all my errors, freeing me from them and all effects they ever seem to have. To fear perfect love's freeing awareness is only to fear complete release from suffering and return to peace, security, happiness, and union with my own identity. So, well, if we believe that perfect love's last judgment would condemn everyone to suffering along with me, then we aren't accepting our pure truth.
Mm.
The pure love's judgment is the gift to correct all our errors, freeing us from all the effects it has on us and the fear.
Exactly. Why do we fear that which is actually going to heal us? It's bizarre, but that's the ego. Because the ego says that it's in charge. That is non-existent. That's destruction. That's what So we have to be vigilant of that tendency to cling on to the ego and perceive letting go and love and peace and joy as somehow fearful. And correct it. Say, no, this is what I really want. I want that peace, security, happiness, freedom from all the suffering. This is what I really want. I don't want to cling on to a thought system that is so obviously false and causes so much pain and suffering. Why would I want to do that? And then you'll never find a good answer. Why would I want to suffer? The ego will tell you because you deserve it, because you're sinful, because you're guilty. But the Holy Spirit says that's not true because you never did separate from your source. So how can you be guilty of anything? All right. Okay, with number 3. Move on to
Yes.
Move on to 4 then. God's final judgment.
In both of them, or
Yeah, I think so. There's a bit to translate there with Son of God and God's final judgment and so on. Salvation as well.
God's final judgment is as merciful as every step in his appointed plan to bless his Son and call him to return to the eternal peace he shares with him. Perfect love's final judgment is an unconditional loving as every step in its appointed plan to bless its extension and call it to return to the eternal peace perfect love shares with it. Be not afraid of love. I am not afraid of love. For it alone can heal all sorrow, wipe away all tears, and gently waken from his dream of pain the son whom God acknowledged as his. For only this judgment can heal all my sorrow, wipe away all my tears, and gently waken from my dream of pain and extension, whom perfect love acknowledges as its. Be not afraid of this. I am not afraid of this. Salvation asks you to give it welcome. Awakening asks that I welcome it. And the world awaits your glad acceptance, which will set it free. And the world awaits my glad acceptance that will set it free. From the top?
Yeah.
Perfect love's final judgment is an unconditional loving, as every step in its appointed plan to bless its extension and call it to return the eternal peace perfect love shares with it. I am not afraid of love, for only this judgment can heal all my sorrow, wipe away all my tears, and gently waken from my dream of pain the extension whom perfect love acknowledges as its. I am not afraid of this. Awakening asks that I welcome it. And the world awaits my glad acceptance that will set it free. So it's saying the perfect love's final judgment is unconditional loving. And to return the eternal piece of perfect love that shares with it. So we're not to be afraid of this love. Because this is the thing this judgment will heal all our sorrow and the dream of pain and all of the suffering. So we're asked to welcome it, all our suffering and pain. No, sorry, we welcome our unconditional love, not the pain. Or are we? To welcome the pain as well?
No, you don't welcome the pain. You observe the pain.
Yeah,
you must look at it in order to let it go. So you observe it, but you realize that pain is not true. Welcoming it would be to go, oh, well, yeah, great, that's wonderful. I've got pain. Oh, yes, bring me more.
Yeah.
Well, that's insane. But this is the ego welcomes pain because it makes the ego real. So you have to realize the ego is addicted to pain and suffering, which is why the world is set up the way it is. That it's, there is so much pain and suffering because the ego requires it to perpetuate its existence. So that's why it's created this world. So the only way out of that is to realize that pain has no purpose. Right? So he teaches us that to us in a number of lessons. He says pain is pointless, meaningless, has no purpose. And then it's just the last judgment is our own decision, our own judgment to that effect, to say, well, there is really no point to all of the suffering. There is no point to the human pain and suffering and sickness and death that goes on in this world. When pure formless awareness of perfect love is ever present and it's eternal. And you can have it back in your awareness right now. Why would you want to do that? Why, indeed, there's no good reason. This is what he's teaching us. So there's no good reason for the ego. So make the one final judgment that you can make, that all of the ego's entire thought system is unreal. This is what the last judgment is. And you get to the point and you see very clear, you understand that idea of separation, everything that came subsequent, the entire ladder of separation, the illusion of a separate self, individual special self, and guilt and sin, and the false expectation of punishment appearing real, or fear, and then projection of that out as accusation, blame, and attack of God and other people, all of that is egoic. Then you've got the last judgment. Then you have the Holy Spirit's reinterpretation of the dream that somebody says, well, none of this is true. So instead, dream a dream with me, reinterpret everything by somebody recognizing the untruth of it. All right. So is that last judgment clear? So it's that one final judgment. And it doesn't happen all at once. It's a progression. Slowly but surely, we start letting go of these beliefs. Whenever you start undoing these beliefs, you are leading to the last judgment, to the final time where you've let go of everything, and there's no more attachment to any of the worlds of form. Okay. Happy to move on to number 5?
Yeah. Both or just the alternative?
It's pretty short, so we read it in both. Got the
Yeah.
God's Holy Son, Creator.
This is God's final judgment. This is perfect love's final judgment. You are still my holy Son, forever innocent, forever loving, and forever loved, as limitless as your Creator, and completely changeless and forever pure. This is perfect love's final judgment. You are still my wholly aware extension, forever innocent, forever loving, and forever loved, as limitless as your source, and completely changeless and forever pure. Therefore, awaken and return to me. Therefore, awaken and return to me. I am your Father, and you are my Son. I am your source, and you are my extension.
May I read that from the top?
This is perfect love's final judgment. You are still my wholly aware extension, forever innocent, forever loving, and forever loved, as limitless as your source, and completely changeless and forever pure. Therefore, awaken and return to me. I am your source, and you are my extension.
Okay.
So again, this is the perfect love's final judgment. So letting us know that we are still forever innocent, loving, limitless, completely changeless, and forever pure. So it's asking us, therefore awaken and return to me.
Don't be scared. Don't be afraid. Just let it all go and come back. I am your source and you are my extension. A lovely sort of prayer. You are still my holy extension. Forever innocent, forever loving, and forever loved. Limitless as your source and completely changes and forever pure.
Yeah, it is very nice, but if you're feeling a lot of pain, that's quite hard to do.
Yeah. Which is why letting go is not easy. Because you have apparently pain and suffering going on in your mind, and now you have to let that go and return to a state where there's no pain. It's just peace, happiness, contentment, freedom. So you must let go of the false identity, the false thoughts and emotions, which seem to be real. They seem to have consumed your mind, yet they're not real. So the principle is simple, but to actually do it, it's a lot of work, a lot of vigilance, a lot of undoing of this very entrenched egoic self-concept that we all have. That's why you're here. Is you're still convinced You're still convinced at the end of your last lifetime that you were a separate self. Okay, so any other thoughts on that? I'm your source, you are my extension.
No, it's all
Really
good.
just saying the last judgment is, well, how would you summarize? If I asked you to say, well, what is the last judgment? In 30 seconds. What is the last judgment?
Well, the last judgment is basically just finally letting go of the persistent ego and realize that once that's done, we're in our source, being part of the source, the extension, then we're free, we're loved, no longer in pain or suffering. Yeah, wonderful state to be in.
Yeah, it's
And
inviting us to enter that state, allow that state more and more. So start trusting in what he's saying, allowing it more and more into our awareness, so that we experience for ourselves that he's not lying to us, that there is this deep connection, and these wonderful states are possible. We start getting glimpses of them. That's the start. So when we start off, we're not fully established in those states, obviously, but if we can get little glimpses, and you have little moments of happiness, little moments of peace and contentment, they're pointing you to that ultimate state where you can start to understand that yes, there is a state of just peace, where it's just perfect peace, and nothing changes. It is possible because I've experienced it for a while. Maybe it was only for a few minutes, but I did experience it. So it's possible. It's there. It's just covered over again by the ego, which hasn't gone yet. So you see why letting go is the only way, because as long as the ego is there, it's going to block that state from arising.
It's just conceptually, I certainly get it. Yes, conceptually, but at the moment, as I say, obviously now I'm coming into sort of like real trials, but I guess that's the way of letting go of all of the gunge and the past and blah blah blah.
The trials bring up your ego in a big way, and then you have to face it, and it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable at all. It feels enormously uncomfortable, and there's a tendency to want to just run away. Go, I just won't deal with any of it. I just want to, beam me up, Scotty. That was said a couple of times in this house over the last couple of days. Beam me up, Scotty. Just like, let me get away. But unfortunately, the only way to be beamed up out of the illusion is letting go. There's no magic technology, anything other than your own willingness, desire for freedom, your willingness to let go without exception or without reserve, whatever the blocks are that are arising. That's the only way you're ever going to do it. But that beam me up, Scotty, is an acknowledgement. Okay, well, you know where that came from. It was the Star Trek series.
Yes.
And they would go onto a planet, and it would get too hot to handle. Basically, they're being attacked or some drama is unfolding. It's like, okay, well, just beam us up, and we just leave, and then there's no drama anymore. We just disappear back into our ship and fly away from the planet. So it's sort of it's an escape hatch. But there's no simple way in this world. I suppose people who commit suicide, essentially what they're trying to do is like the beam me up, Scotty. It's like, okay, well, I can't handle it, so I'll just terminate the body's life. But they haven't dealt with their issues. So the ego drama remains in the mind, and the mind just creates another body in another lifetime, because they haven't really undone that ego construct, which is the problem. So there's no easy way out. You have to go through the process.
Go through it,
of awakening. There's no other way, and it's not an easy process for most
No.
people. Very,
I mean,
the ego is very sticky.
I know Sally,
Yeah.
she's obviously got through to the other side. I mean, did she go into what I call the pit of snakes, where she came to the rebirth that she actually
Oh,
experienced?
she had her challenges. No, there's no doubt. There were times when she was like, I feel, like everything's just moving and I'm not sure who I am anymore. And it's all being
Right.
shaken up. And, it's just quite a
Everybody's
lot of,
different. Yeah.
yeah, everyone's different. And I don't know if she's completely awakened, but
No,
almost
this we don't
certain
know.
there's probably still challenges that come up, and maybe just get a
Mm.
lot better at dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the illusion of, oh, well, you're enlightened, and then suddenly it's like, boom, okay, flick the switch. Oh, no more challenges. Life's just going to be smooth, plain sailing. You're never going to get triggered. You're never going to have any negative thoughts. I think that's a
That's,
very romanticized, idealized version of enlightenment, which isn't particularly helpful or practical or realistic. I think
mm.
even in people who are very advanced in their practice, like Yeshua, the Buddha, they still had stuff to deal with. Yeshua was
Mm.
dealing with, as an example, he was dealing with his own family's rejection of it. And it's recorded in the Bible that he wept. It says Jesus wept, 2 lines. Jesus wept because it was sad for him. It's like, well, I'm this Messiah and I'm healing people and doing amazing work, but my own family rejects me, and don't really see who I am. And he felt that the pain of the separation and the apparent loss of the special relationships and family that he'd grown up with because of the path that he chose to walk, which was an expansive one that was about far more than just his family. He's made an impact around the world on humanity for the last 2,000 years. It went way beyond his little family in Nazareth. But they didn't understand that. They didn't see that. Because how could they? I mean, if you're not awakened like he was, your perspective is very narrow and very limited. But still, he felt the disconnection, and so he cried.
Mm.
So he still, he had obviously some human emotion. He had no emotion. He cried. It's recorded that he went into the temple and he turned the tables up. Well, did he get angry? Maybe he did. Who knows?
Mm.
Did he do it in a completely calm, equanimous state? Or, was there some anger arising to get him to do that? Only he will be able to answer that. But it's quite possible that there were, still these negative emotions. And then his life was about working them out as everyone's is. And he just, did that very successfully, learned his lessons, and finally transcended death itself. So he becomes a way shower to say, well, even though it's not easy, it is possible because I've done it. So I can show you the way out because I know the way out because I've actually done it. I'm not still stuck in the matrix. So I have to be very careful of worldly teachers and teachings because they haven't done it. So with the course, you can, if you stick to that teaching and what he is saying, then you're sticking to what someone who has escaped the entire dream is saying, and that's why we should try and stay true to the message. You start varying it, saying, "Oh no, you didn't really say that," or "didn't really mean that," then you actually undermine his whole teaching, which is designed to free the mind entirely from the dream world. All right, so that's number 5. And the insert done. Happy with that, Elaine? So let's go to moving swiftly on then to the lesson. So if you can read lesson 317 in the original alternative.
I follow
please.
in the way. I follow in the way appointed me. I follow the way I am guided to follow.
The way appointed me is quite old-fashioned. Follow the way I'm guided. Appointed me would be, well, there's a guidance. How do you experience this? You experience it as well as some kind of inner guide. I feel some kind of inspiration, some kind of call to go in a certain direction, to follow a certain way. And how do I know? It's just an inner feeling. So this is a call to listen to guidance, which is coming from the Holy Spirit, also known as the remembrance of perfect love, or intuition. It's another word for it. Into means in you. So it's the self within you that knows somehow what to do. It was interesting is that I chose not to go back to South Africa. I'm very glad the way things have panned out. I've been needed here. It was needed my help and support. And it really, Christmas was a non-event there. They hardly did it. It was like it was one meal. They didn't even have a turkey. Not that you have to have a turkey, but they didn't. Normally there's a couple of things. There's a Christmas brunch and then a dinner. It was one meal. So you get the guidance. I listened to guidance and I followed it, and then things tend to work out better if you do that. If you don't follow the guidance, you feel guided, and then you don't follow it, then you suffer, you struggle, and you suffer. Not because you're being punished, just because the ego is a thought system of struggle and pain and suffering. So if you choose that, then what else can you expect? But that. All right. So if you can read the original, the alternative, line by line of the lesson, please.
I have a special place to fill, a role for me alone. I have a special place to fill, a role for me alone. Salvation waits until I take... Sorry, I'm just... it's the football. I'll just try and see if I can find somewhere so it's a bit quieter. Right on the top of the stairs, hopefully, without losing the Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yes. Where was I?
Start again. I have a special place to fill and a role for me alone.
Yeah. So I have a special place to fill and a role for me alone. Salvation waits until I take this part as what I choose to do. Awakening waits until I take this part as what I choose to do. Until I make this choice, I am the slave of time and human destiny. Until I make this choice, I am the slave of time and human destiny. But when I'm willing and gladly go the way my Father's plan appointed me to go, then will I recognize salvation is already here, already given all my brothers and already mine as well. But when I willingly and gladly go the way my source's plan guides me to go, then I will recognize freedom is already here and already given to me and all my companions.
And from the top, an alternative.
Yeah. I have a special place to fill and a role for me alone. Awakening waits until I take this part as what I choose to do. Until I make this choice, I am the slave of time and human destiny. But when I willingly and gladly go the way my source's plan guides me to go, I will recognize freedom is already here and already given to me and all my companions.
Right, summary of that.
Well, we have a special place in a role to play, but alone. So awakening waits until we take our chosen path. But until we make this choice, then we're stuck in the matrix, basically, to human destiny and all the suffering and pain. But if we're willing...
slave of time. It's shown quite well in this diagram. Actually. Let me show you the timeline diagram. So this is the cycle of birth and death that they talk about in the East. We just seem to be caught up on this timeline, slave to time and human destiny. Time ends up in age and death, inevitably, and there's usually quite a lot of suffering involved with that process. So we are the slave to that process of time, age, sickness, suffering, and death, as long as we hold to the ego, because that's what the ego believes. That is our destiny, our human destiny, is to die. It's very simple, to suffer and to die. This is the human destiny he talks about. This is why we're enslaved. But the spirit frees us from that. It says, no, you're not a slave to time and human destiny. In fact, there is no time, and you're not a human. You're not a person. There's no body. There's no personal identity. So rise above all this and return to this pure source, pure formless awareness of perfect love. And you realize then that there's absolutely no need for the human story. You don't need to be a human being in a separate body, experiencing a separate life with special relationships and all the ups and the downs and the drama and the pain and the suffering that goes with it. It's not necessary in pure formless awareness of perfect love, which is what you really are. And when you fully understand that, then you have awoken from the dream. You're no longer a slave to this process of time and human destiny and then rebirth. The cycle of birth and death is what they talk about in the East. That you just keep going around pure formless awareness of perfect love. You are avoiding it through this karmic loop. Just keep going around and around. You live a life, and then you die, and you come back, and you do it all over again. And just keep doing that until you are willing to go back home to pure formless awareness of perfect love, which lies at your center. Stop skirting the issue and avoiding it. And that's exactly what this path is just helping us to do. It's saying through the letting go, which is the blue, symbolized by the blue arrows in the diagram, we return home to source. All right, so it makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's time and human destiny entail. Okay, so moving on to number 2, which is just the prayer. So again, if you can read that in the original alternative, please.
Yeah. Father, your way is what I choose today. My source, shut the door, it's very noisy. Yeah, right. My source, your way is what I choose today. Where it would lead me, do I choose to go. What it would have me do, I choose to do. I choose to go where it wants to lead me and to go what it wants me to do.
To do what it wants me to do.
Oh, to do what it wants me to do. Your way and the end secure. Way certain, the end of me sure. The memory of you awaits me there. The memory of you awaits me there. And all my sorrows end in your embrace, which you have promised to your son, who thought mistakenly that he had wandered from the sure protection of your loving arms. And all my sorrows end in your embrace, which you have promised to your extension, who thought mistakenly he had wandered in the sure protection of your loving awareness. From the top, my source, your way is what I choose today. I choose to go where it wants to lead me and to do what it wants me to do. Your way is certain, and the end of the journey sure. The memory of you awaits me there, and all my sorrows end in your embrace, which you have promised to your extension, who thought mistakenly that he had wandered from the sure protection of your loving awareness.
Okay, so what's that saying?
Well, we're speaking to our source and saying we're choosing you from now on, and I want you to lead us to my true self, my loving awareness, away from all the sorrows and misery. And my memory awaits you.
Yeah, pointing us back. You know, it's all really the same thing. These lessons are all the same. Just taking it a slightly different tack, a different language, to point us back to, you know, the one truth shown in this diagram over here as the blue. The blue, not a circle, what's that? An oval, blue oval, pointing us always back to that source, pure formless awareness of perfect love, source, knowledge, being, God, Father, heaven, love, oneness, eternity. But now, whatever you want to call it, knowledge, being, what is, doesn't really matter what you call it, but it's about going back there. The only way that you come to know this is to let go of your ego, psychological, and emotional attachments to all of the dramas that seem to be happening in your life. So those are the red arrows that root you down onto the timeline, make the timeline real, make your life real, and block your awareness of this pure formless awareness of perfect love. So as long as you're aware of time and space and what goes on in here and you judge it as real, then your pure formless awareness of perfect love is blocked out. You can't perceive it. You can't be aware of it. So the way out of that bind is to let go completely, wholly. To let go of the separate self-concept and all of its psychological and emotional attachments. That, by the way, is called karma. You know, your psychological and emotional attachments, desires, fears, is what they call in the East karma, accumulated egoic thoughts. Now, you maintain that. If you haven't let go of that stuff, you maintain that in your mind, and that just causes you to come back as a separate self and have another birth and go through the whole drama again, because that egoic entity has to play itself out somewhere, and it does it in the construct of a human life in time and space. And that's why we seem to come here time and time again as human beings. That's why the world seems to exist, is to play out the ego's karma. So once you've let go of all of that, there's no more karma, there's no more ego, then why would you come to the world? Why, if you look at, you know, the average human life, look at your life, look at the average human, it's not particularly pretty, is it? It's not a great show at all.
No.
Generally, quite a lot of pain, suffering, drama, maybe some successes. People have families and they go, well, there's some supposedly good stuff in there. But of course, none of it lasts. Eventually, all of it fades away and eventually everyone dies. That's the human story. And that's repeated over and over. And so until we were ready to actually wise up, go, okay, I've got to be really honest about this and not buy into the societal hypnosis, because most people are completely hypnotized. They don't look and they can't see clearly what actually is going on in this red timeline. And go, well, what is this? This is crazy. Why does this even exist? Why all the pain and the suffering and the drama? Why do we eventually die? Because if you ask those kinds of penetrating questions, you're going to start to have to look outside of the ego's thought system for answers. Of course, the ego doesn't want you to do that. So it blocks out those questions from most people's awareness. It says, well, just focus on what's right in front of you, forget, anything higher, immerse yourself in the distractions of the world, the materialism of the world, and that will satisfy you. And that's by and large the Western formula, anyway, for some kind of so-called successful life. But there's no spiritual awareness in that at all. It's purely materialistic. And so then there's something missing. You can't, help but feel that there's some kind of deep psychological part of you missing when you live that. And that, of course, is the being of who you are. You've submerged that. You're not aware of it. And so it's going to be forever calling you. It can never go away. So there's always going to be this disquiet in you. It's like, I'm not really that comfortable with this. And as try as I might to make the illusion work of my separate self, I cannot. I will never ease that sense of discomfort with anything other than truth. So people try all kinds of ways to distract ourselves endlessly, all kinds of things. We just had Christmas that made a distraction for most people. So we have lots of food and drink, and we have presents and shopping and substances, as I mentioned, drink and other things, drugs and whatever, to distract ourselves from that existential pain of not knowing who we are. And until you're willing to face that pain fully, feel it, experiencing it fully, and then letting it go, you can't undo the ego. And that facing that existential pain is the existential crisis that has been come to be called the abyss, or the awakening, the undoing, existential crisis. We look at, let's go into the hero's journey. We'll have a look at that. Yeah, this stuff down here, the death and the rebirth. That's actually, those are not snakes. That's fire, I believe.
Oh, right.
That's kind of the fire of flames, the fire of it's like a crucible, And so as metal, in order to transform a metal into something else, it has to be smelted down. So it has to go through the fire, have the impurities burned away, and then be forged again, be reborn into the new form. You were making some raw metal into, say, a sword, or some tool or something. It has to be smelted down first. So it's a breaking down of all of this egoic structure, the death of that, and then it's all transformed now into another self that comes out of that, resurrects out of the ashes of that death of the ego. And that then you finally have an experience, the revelation of who you are, which is that you are one with your source. So that's that one-ment. And then you get various gifts that are given to you. Often you get, they call them cities or powers in the East, cities. You get these powers that come to help you to do now what you're called to do. So you return to the normal world, but you now have a call to teach, to heal, to be someone who inspires others to take on the hero's journey and go through the process you've been through. And you get given certain gifts and abilities. And apart from anything else, you're happy. There's love, peace, and joy. But the abilities that you get given can be extraordinary, as we've seen with people like Yeshua. He came back, having done this, he came back into his old society as a transformed human being, and he was they were like, who is this guy? Where does he come from? He's totally out of the box. He's totally different. He's telling us things that are not in our understanding, in our religious leaders' understanding, and he's able to back it up with these extraordinary miracles to show that he's actually speaking the truth. completely rocked the ego structure of the known world. All right. So is that hero's journey? Do you want to discuss that anymore, Elaine? You happy with that?
I'm just trying to see where I'm at, still at the trials and failure, growth, new skills. So I'm not really sure where I am. Not sure
Well,
at all. Still probably.
look at that. 6 tests, allies, and enemies. So it
Yeah.
breaks down into substages. Second act, which is adventure. So you certainly had some of those experiences, tests, enemies. You had the garage owners,
Yes.
allies. So that's people who are helping you in your
like it's
journey.
like
Well,
this group. Like
exactly.
this.
Yeah, precisely. So that's what you're playing out.
Yeah.
And so then you're approaching the inner cave, which is where the ordeal happens, where you have to face your own ego, which is
Right.
an
And
ordeal
it's
because it's not nice. You've got to face your own darkness and realize that it's not you and that you can overcome it.
but it really
And that's
it's challenging, isn't it? Yeah, because now, like I say, it's manifesting in like burning stations now in my hands and feet. So yeah, obviously, yeah.
And that is psychosomatic. It's not the CBD oil. I mean, it might soothe it a bit, but it's psychosomatic. That that the answer lies in going through the process and letting go of that which is arising. The burning sensation, would symbolize the rising of the ego, and the burning, literally, the flames. There you go. It's burning up.
It is
it's
actually.
It's like a burning. Well, that's why they talk about the inner fire. Transformation has been associated with fire for millennia, because fire is a transformative element. It breaks things down, and it changes the state from solid to liquid. So now the form of whatever was can be transformed in that fluid state. So that's what's happening. Your fixed ego construct is breaking down, and then often these kinds of physical symptoms come. But it's not a bad thing. It's the body, and the energy system. Remember, it's all energy reacting to the transformation, and you experience it as, okay, well, there's physical sensations. People can have sickness. They can feel nauseous. When we do the Art of Letting Go course, there's always physical stuff that comes up because the ego is really being tested and really being challenged. So, it reacts with, it comes out, and those symptoms then manifest.
Right.
It's part of the ego's arising, but that's also necessary. It's part of the journey of undoing it. So you just got to remind yourself, well, this is all about, I'm going through this process. The ego is being burned up. It might be uncomfortable, emotionally, physically uncomfortable, but there's no other way. I have to go through this. You can't stop your growth here and go, oh, well, I've completed the journey. You have to go full circle. And have had a shift and a transformation. You might have others. One cycle of it might not fully awaken. So you might do this a number of times. That's possible. And each time it's another iteration. It's another level of it. It's another layer of the ego that comes off. So, this is what you're facing now. You can only deal with what you're facing now. And that's, to let go of, the quite heavy, dense construct of Elaine, who likes to manage and plan and control things and have everything.
Control, yes.
Control, yeah. And I observe it with a lot of women have it. Men also have it. But women seem to be very, like, I don't know, it's part of the programming of being female, or who knows, or whatever, societal, or maybe it's related to how you wired up so you can take care of children. I don't know, but it seems like that's a big thing. Control, like we have to control and manage the minutiae, the detail of life.
Mm.
And I suppose, from a survival perspective, you go, well, kids, if you have young children, you need to be detailed. You can't just go,
Yeah.
oh, well, let them
Simply
eat
the
whatever they want, do whatever, because they'll probably hurt themselves. That's not good for the survival of the species. So
yeah.
it's kind of built in to the mothering instinct. And that's
That's,
why mothers are typically much more detailed. And fathers are like, well, it's
of
okay,
course.
let it
Yeah.
go, because
Mm.
they're not programmed in the same way. And this,
No,
and obviously I'm generalizing because there are
it's
men who are
true. Yeah.
very controlling. There's no doubt men can also have control issues, sometimes just in a different way.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
They'll have control, but they might express that control as, well, I want to be the big cheese at work, and I want to have people under my thumb, and often doing it differently. Um, so anyway, these are that construct is what's got to be broken down systematically with this kind of mind training and spiritual practice that you're doing, so that you become very fluid and open. And it's all kind of been smelted down. Your old identity's been smelted down. There's just now this pure awareness, and you start to become aware of the awareness that was always underneath the egoic structure, the self-concept. And that then is the revelation of who you really are. That's
It's
the
quite a,
enlightenment.
yeah. I'm just saying it's ironic that this is fire and my hands and feet are on fire.
Well,
That's quite,
exactly. That's why I wanted to show it to you, because
I
I
thought it was
mean, that's my
snakes.
interpretation of the diagram. Those don't look like
Yeah.
snakes because there's no snake head.
Now
I
that I'm
think
looking at it, I can see it's not snakes. Yeah, but I
that's
didn't
not
look at it
snakes. No,
properly. Yeah. Just
it's
hadn't been looking at it
it's
properly.
fire. It possibly could have been drawn better because normally flames are kind of a bit more jagged. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that's whoever drew it. It's like, well, that's their interpretation of the fire. So it's the flame of transformation in a fire that is in many traditions, many spiritual traditions have this idea of the inner fire. Alchemy being a primary one. The alchemical, the idea of lead being turned into gold, it happened through fire. That was a metaphor for this kind of inner fire burning up the ego, and you going from the lead, very heavy, dull, solid egoic structure, to the gold, which is your true self, which is truly valuable, and that the lead gets turned into the gold. It was a metaphor. It wasn't meant to happen in practice. People misunderstood. It wasn't like they were actually trying to turn lead into gold. Maybe some of them did, but then that would have been a materialization of what was actually non-material. It was the inner work. It was the journey to find the gold within you that was really important to the true alchemist, not the, oh, well, I've turned lead into gold story, because that was just materialization. And what out of alchemy was born, modern science. So what they then started to do was focus on the material and the form. So you had chemistry coming out of alchemy, which became very, very separated. Scientific materialism evolved, from those sciences, which then started, instead of focusing on the mind and the spirit, which are fluid and flexible, started to focus on categorizing and naming things, putting things into things like the periodic table, and all these elements, and then doing experiments to describe, the interaction of these elements with each other, and so on. And it's like, but hang on, what has that got to do with discovering your true self? Nothing. But actually, modern science, was born out of alchemy. So it has a spiritual foundation and roots, which have largely been forgotten by most scientists. They don't even acknowledge it. Did you know that Isaac Newton was a very keen alchemist? And he had this split in his mind, because he all studied it. He also wrote the laws of physics, and Newtonian science was really the foundation then of the whole industrial revolution. So that was the one part. That was his kind of public persona. But then he had this whole alchemy thing going on, which is private. And I think he found it a conflict. He even said at the end of his life, I've used that quote, it's just like seems like I've been like a boy on the seashore, just playing around with pebbles, when In front of me lay the great ocean of truth, all undiscovered.
So you just
I'm
hid it
paraphrasing.
from everybody else. You just hid it from other people.
Yeah, because it was like, well, if you if you taught that, I mean, he was a professor at Cambridge. If he taught that, he probably would have lost his position. But he had that duality going on. And, this comment, the end of his life, is very telling.
Mm.
There, you want to read that? Let's just put it into.
Yeah. I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore and diverting myself in now and then finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me. Mm.
That's
Yeah.
quite an admission. He was
Mm.
the greatest scientist of his generation. He established the laws of physics. The scientific materialism was really based on his work. His work laid the foundation for engineering and all kinds of disciplines that then became the Industrial Revolution, built on those laws of physics that he, discovered and laid out. And this, at the end of his life, he's going, well, actually, I was just playing around. Actually, I didn't really get to the truth at all. The truth lay all undiscovered before me. So that would have been his higher self, the part that, engaged in alchemy and spiritual practices, would have said this, would have written this down. And when actually, everyone thinks I'm so great and I'm, the most amazing scientist, but actually in myself, I know that I haven't really even touched this great ocean of truth. It's still undiscovered because I focused most of my time and energy on describing and writing laws to do with the physical material, which are actually false. They're a denial of underlying truth, because they make Newtonian physics says the world exists as something independent and separate outside of you. These physical laws exist separate from the people and the things and entities that seem to exist within the world. That's what it postulates. And that's just not true. Quantum mechanics has shown very clearly that is not true. Quantum mechanics says there is no reality in the absence of observation. It flies completely in the face of what Newton said. But Newton understood that already. He understood there was something greater that he hadn't discovered, and it took 300 years for that to be discovered and then become a scientific principle, quantum mechanics. And the theory of relativity as well. Einstein also touched on it because he understood that everything's relative. There's no time and space are not absolute and fixed as Newton believed them to be. They are relative. Therefore, they cannot be real if they're relative because they change. And so these were the scientific revolution at the beginning of the last century was really just a reawakening of the alchemical knowledge that was always there, but had been buried for 300 years because people got so enamored of Newton's theories and what they could do. Those laws of physics were what then birthed the whole industrial revolution. All this progress, material progress and technology and all this stuff's advancing. And then they forget that actually he was just, he was playing. He was missing these great truths, which, because the truth can never be hidden for very long, came to light 300 years later in the next scientific revolution, just spearheaded by Einstein and then the quantum physicists of the early 1900s. And all of that is just part of this great unfolding of the at-one-ment in humanity. See these movements. And then where's it all heading? As James Jeans, who was a quantum physicist in the early 1900s, said, it begins to look like the universe is more like a great thought than a great machine. Let's find that Jeans for you. And wait, let's do it in there. There we go. You want to read that? So this was a guy who popularized quantum mechanics, essentially. 1930, I think this book was written. And he was a popular science author. He tried to explain it in kind of layman's terms. And this is what he had to say.
The stream of knowledge is heading towards a non-mechanical reality. The universe begins to look more like a great thought than like a great machine. Mind no longer appears to be an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. We ought rather hail it as the creator and governor of the realm of matter.
Yeah, and this was a scientist who said it. So he was really pointing to the fundamental nature of mind and that the universe is a projection of thought. This is what he's saying. More like a great thought than a great machine. Newton's concept was it's a machine, very mechanistic. He's saying it's all actually heading the opposite direction towards a non-mechanical reality. Mind no longer appears to be an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. See, this was foreshadowing the last 100 years. The hard problem of science has been how to explain consciousness. They call it the hard problem. How do you explain consciousness? Well, some kind of accidental byproduct of brain function. That's the way my scientific materialists try and explain it. And then, well, when the brain dies, the body dies. But hang on, the evidence doesn't support that at all, because we know that people can have out-of-body experiences. People have near-death experiences where their brain dies. There's no longer any brain activity, and yet they have this whole experience. They come back and they tell us about it. So what was happening there? Where did they go? So how can our consciousness then be rooted in the brain? Evidence doesn't support that at all. From any perspective, from near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, from the science side, or from the science side, people like James Jeans and other quantum physicists saying, well, actually, the science, quantum mechanics, is saying that there's no reality in the absence of observation. That's the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics. So it's more like a great thought than a great machine. So it's a projection of thought, which is what spiritual teachers and teachings have been saying for forever. So then science and the spirituality start to converge on one reality, which they agree on. And we're kind of at the cutting edge of that. And now it's taken people 100 years to really just even start getting their minds around quantum mechanics and trying to understand it. And many don't. Even scientists who should, they don't really understand it because it's so radical. So it is so radical. I remember listening to one quantum physicist on, did you ever watch What the Bleep Do We Know?
I did, but many years ago. So
and there's one guy who said, but what are we asking? Quantum mechanics is saying something so fundamental, so radical, that most people can't comprehend it. It's too much. So, but if you really understand it, it's the undoing of the entire world of illusion. That's the whole, because that's what quantum mechanics is saying. It's an illusion. That's what it's saying. That's why it's so fundamentally radical. I.e., it's saying exactly the same thing all the spiritual teachers and teachings have said for thousands of years. Quantum mechanics says that, just not quite as directly. And most scientists are scared of saying that because it's like, oh, well, then I'm becoming some kind of woo-woo mystic or something. So they tend not to go into that, and they tend to then focus on trying to refine the law. Oh, well, let's try and get better at our quantum mechanics. No, you don't have to. Just know quantum mechanics is pointing you to the ultimate truth beyond all illusion. Accept that, and then you'll be free. But then they wouldn't be a scientist. They would become mystics. And so the self-concept blocks them from doing that. And so they keep looking for answers within this construct of science and not looking outside. I mentioned that talk that the guy did at Cambridge, where he said the most interesting thing he said was, at time zero, we have no idea. At time t equals zero, we have no idea what happens. We have no knowledge of that. It's the unknown. He said that in one sentence, and then he proceeded to just gloss over that and carry on and say, well, no, actually, now we're back in the illusion, and we're going to talk about the standard model, and we can try and improve that and get better equations to describe it. But hang on, you just stumbled over the truth there and you ignored it, which is what most do. As Winston Churchill said quite well, most men stumble over the truth from time to time, but most pick themselves up and hurry off as if nothing had ever happened. It's exactly what that chap did. All right. So a little bit of a, well, not really a diversion. It's all connected. Do you see how the hero's journey is bound up with the metaphysics? You can't really separate them. You have to understand the metaphysics in order to take your hero's journey. That's why The Matrix was such a brilliant movie.
I guess a lot of people, including myself, of course, was number 3 for many years, refusal of the call. You would get these challenges, but you refused the call. Yeah.
Yeah. Any challenge is actually a call to adventure. You can see it correctly. So that call can happen many times in life. And it will keep happening until you accept it. So even if you die, okay, well, that's just temporary. You come back, have another life, and then you get this story all over again. This is the universal archetype of human life that Joseph Campbell has kindly discovered, laid out for us, and said, well, this is it. This is across all different cultures, traditions. This is the archetype. So you can't escape it. This is the hero's journey that you will either accept and go through, or you deny it and you stay blocked in the normal world, and you're not a hero then. You're not on your hero's journey. You're a frustrated hero. A hero in waiting, but someone who hasn't actually listened to that call and said, all right, I'll go for this, and I'll take the plunge. And I'll do this because what other option do I really have? Stay in this normal world, which is really unsatisfying, and just live a very unsatisfying, quite unhappy life, or go for it, and give it your all. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, dive deep and swim far, because you shall come back with an expanded experience. Just find that for you. You can read that quote, and then we'll move on to a meditation. Keep doing that. Awesome. There we go. You want to read that?
Yeah. Be not the slave of your own past. Plunge into the sublime. Seize. Dive deep and swim far. So you shall come back with new self-respect, with new power, and with an advanced experience that shall explain and overlook the old.
Yeah. So that's what that's calling us to take the plunge, isn't it? That's the call to the hero's journey. Dive in, it's dive deep, swim far, and you come back from the hero's journey with an advanced experience that shall explain and overlook the old. Exactly, that quote is summarized in the hero's journey quite well. Okay, so go back to the lesson. So I think let's do a meditation on the lesson, shall we?
Yeah.
And then we can go into some of the psychotherapy manual.
Yeah.
A few paragraphs of that to do. All right, so just Get a recording going. Okay, so let's do a meditation on this lesson 317. So just sitting comfortably with your feet shoulder width apart, sitting on a chair, your back straight. Up your hands in your lap. Close your eyes. And start off by taking a nice deep breath in through the nose. So breathing in, noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises. You clench the sphincter muscle to lock the energy in, pull the energy up your spine. All the way up through the heart center. Put one hand in your heart. Breathe into your heart. Feel this warm wave of tingling energy there. Draw it up into the crown of your head, all the way to the top of your head. You pause at the top of the inhale. Take another sip of air in. Maximal inhale breath. So now just check in and scan your mind. So you're going to notice any thoughts, any emotions going on, related body sensations, particularly anything that feels at all negative, limiting, attracted, constricted in any way. You just breathe into that. As in you breathing in light, beautiful golden white light. You don't visualize well, just the feeling of light, sense of lightness of being. You breathe that into every pore, every cell, your body, every muscle, every part of your mind, every fiber of your being is in the light of your true awareness. And follow in the way it pointed me, or totally said, I follow the way I'm guided to follow. Follow the way I'm guided to follow. Always and in all ways. That way is always to let go of my ego's judgments, any negativity, start letting it go and releasing it. Exhale, blow it all out. As in it's leaving you like a dark cloud or black smoke. It's going, gone from the lower stomach into the spine. Expel the last remaining air out. And just feel the weight of your body pressing down into the chair. Just rooting yourself into a deeper state of awareness. Breathing in. And so as you breathe in, you can listen to these words I'll speak from the lesson. And then when I pause, you exhale and you speak the words. Say them aloud as affirmations of the truth. So breathing in. Pause to listen to these words from Yeshua, our master teacher. It says, I have a special place to fill and a role for me alone. So say that as you exhale out through your nose. I have a special place to fill and a role for me alone. Breathing in again. Awakening awaits. Till I take this part as what I choose to do. Breathing in again. Till I make this choice. I am the slave of time and human destiny. Till I make this choice, I am the slave of time and human destiny. I'm bound up in the timeline, caught up in the cycle of birth and death, bound to continuously repeat that until I'm wanting to free myself. When I willingly and gladly go the way my source's plan guides me to go. So breathe in on that. Invite this plan which comes in via the remembrance of perfect love. So when I willingly and gladly go the way my Father's plan or my source's plan guides me to go, I will recognize freedom is already here and already given to me and all my companions. I will recognize freedom is already here and already given to me and all my companions. And so breathe in and just imagine this sense of freedom flowing in to your body, mind, your energy system, just enlightening. Enlightening your mind, waking you up to the truth of who you really are. Breathing in again. So say this prayer, which is really just an affirmation again to addressing your higher self, true self. Say, my source. And then your way is what I choose today. I choose to go where it wants to lead me. Your way is what I choose today. And again. Choose to go where it wants to lead me, to do what it wants me to do. So you ask for the guidance to move, to be open, not to block it. Open to guidance, which will come in the form of thoughts, just a feeling, an impulse. It can come in the form of external guidance, a person, a movie, a book, a signpost, social media post can come in many, many ways. Your way is certain, breathing in. Your way is certain, and the end of the journey sure. Your way is certain, and the end of the journey sure. The memory of you awaits me there, and all my sorrows end in your embrace. You have promised to your extension. You thought mistakenly that he had wandered from the sure protection of your loving awareness. So have a sense of letting go as you exhale, of all the sorrows, any pain and suffering, anything that troubles you at all. Just move life to the breeze of your breath, to this loving awareness. Sink inwards to this loving awareness. Feel this embrace that he talks about. It's just entering more deeply into your own most innermost awareness of love. Nothing else to go, nothing else to do, nothing else to think about. You just breathe, relax, be still, and surrender into this awareness. Let it envelop you and encompass you fully. Sink deeper into each breath as you're breathing in and out through your nose. Deeper and deeper with each breath into this awareness. Nothing else to go, nothing else to do. Sinking inwards to the depth of this awareness. Any thoughts come in, simply block this awareness. Maybe just any distracting thoughts, thoughts about the past, the future, obvious distractions, maybe some subtle ones going on in your mind, maybe some emotions with fear, anxiety about next year, whatever it is. Just look at it and remind yourself that I follow the way I'm guided to follow. That guidance is always there, it's always available, I can always trust it. Always trust in this guidance. So you can just blow it away with the breeze of your breath. Blow it away like dark clouds. It's leaving you, it's going, gone. Low stomach into the spine, expel the last remaining air out. Just rest here. Stillness and silence for a few moments. A couple of minutes. Those moments extend to a couple of minutes of deep silence. There's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, nothing else to think about. Just surrender into the loving embrace of your own loving awareness. All my sorrows end in your embrace, says the prayer. Which you have promised your extension, thought mistakenly that it had wandered from the sure protection of your loving awareness. So sink into this embrace, let it all go, just allow this experience to completely embrace you, as the word says. Surrender into it, feel encompassed and embraced. Just watching your breath as you do this, sinking deeper and deeper with each breath into the loving embrace of your source for the next couple of minutes of deep, peaceful silence. So just coming back gently into an awareness, the body and the breath, senses of the world. And on the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes. So 1, just breathing in. Noticing how the stomach rises and the chest rises. Subtle flow of air in through the nostrils. And you just pause. Top of the inhale. Scan your mind, noticing any thoughts, emotions, related body sensations going on. Particularly anything that feels at all negative, limiting, contracted, constricting in any way. Breathe it in. And remind yourself of the key idea of today's lesson, that I follow the way I'm guided to follow. I can let go of any block to the awareness of love's presence. I can release it, exhale, blow it out, release, blowing it out of your mouth, letting it go out of your energy system. Just going, gone. From the lower stomach into the spine. Expel the last remaining air out. And you rest in this deep, contented silence. Bottom of the exhale. Find the space, the gap between breaths, which is silent, still, calm, and peaceful. Feel the power of that stillness. And that stillness allows you all awakening. And a rebirth into the true self that you really are. So on the count of 2 now, just notice the weight of your body pressing down into the chair and your feet touching the ground. Noticing what you're feeling. Your hands touching, perhaps with a subtle taste in your mouth. Smell in your nose, perhaps. Noticing what you're hearing in the surrounding environment. Just noticing all these things from this very still, calm, and surrendered state of no judgment, non-judgmental perception, which is very calm, peaceful, and happy. So anchor the state in, set the intention to stay here for the rest of the session, on into the evening, and the rest of your week. So it is said, so it is done. And now on the count of 3, you open your eyes. Let's take a moment to look around the room, looking at any object your eyes happen to rest on, without judgment. They're all the same. Notice any object, And then close your eyes. Briefly notice the peace that is still there. Open your eyes, notice the same peace. Nothing's really changed just because your eyes are open or closed. Your inner state is identical, remains the same. That's what this mind training exercise is designed to teach you. That it's really all the same. And so now on the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes. So just fully awake, wide, aware, back in the world, but with a deeper sense of peace, perhaps, than you had before. And you can carry that peace with you into the rest of the session and your evening. So that brings us to the end of the meditation. Let's move swiftly on into our final section of the session. The final section of the session is we're going to look at the psychotherapy, purpose, processes, and practices manual. So this is a supplement. Let's just find it. Still there, Len?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we started this, if you recall, for Christmas. We did the introduction, and we had yesterday I suggested you read the section on Christmas as the end of sacrifice. And before it was these two split over 2 days. So you haven't actually missed anything. We did the introduction to the supplement. This is now the number 2, the process of psychotherapy, which is the second part of the supplement. And there's an introduction to it, which is 4 paragraphs. So let's see how we go. We have some more time, depending on your time and mine. Maybe we can go and we can do the limits on psychotherapy as well, which is another 4 paragraphs. So 8 paragraphs in total. I haven't really done much translation here because there isn't really a need. If you notice that he's not really using spiritual terminology. He's not using Holy Spirit, God, very much at all. So hence no translation. Okay, so just read that, Elaine, in the this is the process of psychotherapy, the introduction to it, paragraph 1. If you can read that from top, please.
Sorry.
Okay, are you able to read?
The process of psychotherapy. Yep, yes, it was just sorting some noise out there. Right.
Can I make this a bit
Psychotherapy
bigger, please?
is a process.
Can I make it a bit bigger?
That's fine. Yeah, no, that's fine. Psychotherapy is a process that changes the view of the self. At best, this new self is a more beneficent self-concept, but physiotherapy. Beneficent self-concept, but psychotherapy can hardly be expected to establish reality. That is not its function. If you can make way for reality, it has achieved its ultimate success. Its whole function, in the end, is to help the patient deal with one fundamental error, the belief that anger brings him something he really wants, and that by justifying attack, he is protecting himself. To whatever extent he comes to realize that this is an error, to the extent he is truly saved.
To that extent, yeah, he's truly saved, or she is truly saved. Okay, so what's he saying in the first one?
Well, psychotherapy is a process to view the self. It's like a new self.
It changes the view of the self. That's what it's actually for. But he's saying at best, this is just a more beneficent self-concept. So if it can make way for ultimate reality to achieve its ultimate success, and then he goes on to say it's one fundamental error is to correct this fundamental error that anger brings the person something he really wants or she really wants. So why do people go to psychotherapy? They're usually angry or deeply depressed, but then underneath the depression, there's often anger and rage. They're not happy. So it's this delusion that anger brings the person something they really want. By justifying attack, they're protecting themselves. And you see it played out. I've seen it over the last couple of days, just played out in the special relationships. Anger seems to be justified. Apparently, defense is justified. Then you perceive an attack on yourself and on others, and all of this, the patient, who's now the person who's confused about who they really are, thinks there's some kind of protection. Well, I need to defend myself, protect myself. But really, by making anger and attack real, they've actually allowed themselves to be harmed. Because attack comes from anger, and so how can that be any kind of defense or protection? So he's saying we have to realize through this process of psychotherapy that we've just made a mistake, that anger is never justified, attack isn't justified. It's actually not protecting us, it's hurting us, and we have to let it go. And if psychotherapy can achieve that, if it can help the patient to achieve that realization, then it's been successful to whatever extent that it's helped them to do that. So a lot of people get some benefit from psychotherapy, but they don't go the whole way, because they might go, okay, well, I have let go of some of my anger towards myself, towards others. And so there's some healing, but I haven't necessarily let it all go, because if I've let it all go, then I would be enlightened. There would be no longer be a separate self concept. Okay. Any other thoughts on number one?
No, that's clear.
Where's part?
Number two?
Patients do not enter. Right.
Okay, no, you got me today.
Yeah, just there's a little bit of things going on. Oh, sorry. Yeah, just won't be a moment there. Just be a moment. Okay. Patients do not enter the therapeutic relationship with this goal in mind. On the contrary, such concepts mean little to them, or they would not need help. Their aim is to be able to retain their self-concept exactly as it is, but without the suffering that it entails. Their whole equilibrium rests on the insane belief that this is possible, and because to the sane mind it is so clearly impossible, what they seek is magic. In illusions, the impossible is easily accomplished, but only at the cost of making illusions true. The patient has already paid this price. Now he wants to better illusion.
No. So what's he saying there? It's quite profound.
Well, patients that go in for psychotherapy are hoping to feel better from the illusion. And all they want is just to feel better in the illusion, but they're missing the point. They're missing the valuable point of who they really are. And that's where their equilibrium rests, rather than in the insane belief of the illusion.
Yeah, so they go to psychotherapy. It's like saying to someone, well, help me, but I don't really want to change anything, which is evidently insane. As he says, this is an insane belief that this is possible. Okay, so I'm going to the psychotherapist. I'm expecting them to help me because I'm not happy, but I don't actually want to let go of anything. I don't really want to change anything. That's typically what people who enter into psychotherapy think. They're not thinking, well, I'm going here to deconstruct my whole personality, my whole identity. They just want some kind of quick fix. Well, doc, look, I'm not happy. I'm angry, so help me. But I don't really want to let go of the self-concept that's behind the anger and the pain and the suffering. And he's saying that's insane. It's like saying, well, yes, I really want to change, but don't change anything. Funnily enough, someone once said to me, and this happens in corporates as well. He was doing some work for a bank in South Africa, consulting sort of service. And they said, look, we've got a big problem. So we want you to fix it, but don't change anything.
Yeah.
Well, that's just totally insane, isn't it? I mean, but they actually said it. He said, guys, how do you expect me to fix anything if I don't make some changes? If we maintain the status quo, it will maintain as it is. Your system is broken. So obviously you need to change it. Surely, that would logically, obviously, but the ego is so dense that it somehow manages to maintain this impossible illusion that you can somehow fix it without really fixing it, without fixing the problem, which is the self-concept. Illusions are impossible is easily accomplished, but only the cost of making illusions true. Okay, so then you have to make the whole illusion, because it all rests on this false self. You have to make everything that comes from that false self, your life, your problems, this world, your special relationships, all of it has to be true in order to justify the false self. The patient's already paid this price. Now he just wants a better illusion. Well, I don't like the current version, so let's upgrade the illusion. And often that looks like, well, let's rearrange the furniture. Let's get a better illusion going. And those kind of desires often lead into the personal growth industry as well. Oh, well, someone's promising me that I can have a better car, more money, better relationship, a fulfilling career. Okay, I'll sign up for that course or that program because it's going to give me a better illusion. But they don't really want to change their self-concept. They just want to enhance it. Oh, well, I'll become a kind of a better version of me. It's interesting. I was watching Forrest Gump yesterday. It's on Channel 4. You probably don't have Channel 4 there, but it's on. It's starting live on Channel 4. And so there's a great scene where you remember his girlfriend, Jenny.
Yes,
and he's gone back to her dorm room. She's in college. And she's kind of saying, well, I want to be something more than me. I want to be like a better version of me. And she's thinking that this is all, very wise. And he goes, well, I just am what I am. I'm Forrest Gump. Really simply, in a simple, straightforward way, stating the truth. And she's like, well, I want a better version of me. And that's what she's seeking through the whole movie. Of course, she doesn't find it. In fact, she finds the opposite. She finds a lot of pain and heartache and a lot of abuse and drug addiction and etc. And he's just like, well, I just am what I am. No illusions, no drama. I'm not trying to be anything other than what I am. I'm not trying to be seem to be smarter than what I am. There's no ego there, virtually.
It's a good film.
So it's very straightforward. And she's like very complicated. And the characters, like his that lieutenant who was in the army, who lost his legs, Lieutenant Dan.
Oh yes, yeah.
Very complicated. All the anger and the rage, and he's got this whole idea that it was destiny to die on the battlefield because that's what all of his family have done. Have died in a war. So that was his destiny, and he's convinced himself of that. Now he's angry because the guys saved him, and just all illusion in his mind. And Forrest Gump is just like, well, I don't buy any of that. He doesn't buy any of the illusions. So he's kind of the voice of sanity, just saying, well, you are what you are, and just accept it and be at peace with it. And if you actually allow, then things kind of work out. Somehow, although he's stupid by society standards, he's got an IQ of 75. He's amazingly successful because he just gets on with it and he does it.
He's a genius. He's a genius in that he's
so simple.
Connected to his source. Yeah.
Because he's just, well, I'm simple. I just do whatever's required. And his act of bravery is, we stopped watching it halfway through. He gets the Congressional Medal of Honor. He just did what was required. He's got friends, they're in there. He's not thinking about, oh, well, I've got to save myself. And he's like, well, there's my friend in there. I've got to go find him. No thoughts of self. Oh, well, I might get blown up or shot or, injured. He's not thinking of that. He's just like, well, I got a friend, and then he comes across others. Okay, well, they're lying there. I'll just pull them out. He's not concerned with, oh, this is my destiny to die on the battlefield or any of that nonsense. He's just like, well, that's what's helpful to do in the moment, and he does it. So it's actually a brilliant movie, just showing, just do it.
Yeah, it was very good. I enjoyed that film. It was good.
That kind of enlightened state of, well, no dramas, no fuss, just do it and actually perform at a very high level because you're so in the moment and focused on what you're doing that there's nothing else. And then it's like, oh, he leaves the army and he just moves on. All right, well, off I go there. That stopped, and then I'll move on to the next thing. And the next thing, and whatever he does, he does it with intent. So I've just got a call. Looks like my wife's calling. Let me just mute quickly. I'm just gonna... Okay, Elaine, just quick, give me a minute. I just need to go put the oven on.
Oh, no rush, no rush.
Yeah. It'll only take 30 seconds. So I'll put the oven on. I'll come back. All right. We're back. Let's just start the video again. Let's share my screen. Okay, so where were we? Number 3.
Yeah.
At the beginning then.
At the beginning then, the patient's goal and the therapist are at variance. The therapist, as well as the patient, may cherish false self-concepts, but their respective perceptions of improvement still must differ. The patient hopes to learn how to get the changes he wants without changing his self-concept to any significant extent. He hopes, in fact, to stabilize it sufficiently to include within it, the magical powers he seeks in psychotherapy. He wants to make the vulnerable invulnerable and the finite limitless. The self he sees is his God, and he seeks only to serve it better.
Okay. So what's he saying in that one?
Yeah. Well, the therapist is only interested in his own false self-concept and is just looking to improve that and hopes to learn to change all of this to a significant extent. So he's actually asking for these magical powers he's seeking through psychotherapy, but he's actually looking for what he wants is to make the invulnerable invulnerable and the finite limitless. And he wants the little self to be the God and seeks only to serve it better, not the true self.
Yeah. So it's trying to make of the little self something that it can never be. And he goes to psychotherapy to try and accomplish that, and sees the therapist as some kind of magic worker, and maybe the therapist buys into it because the therapist has their own false self-concept of. So it's quite well known in psychotherapy that often the relationship between the therapist and the patient becomes codependent, and then they actually have to break it up. It's not healthy for either of them. A friend I had who was he's a psychiatrist, said he had a therapist for a number of years in the UK, and he said eventually he had to say, okay, enough. I've now got married. This is not helpful anymore because there's a codependency. The therapist has become attached to the patient because their own self-concept gets involved. So unless you've got a therapist who's fully enlightened, which is rare, then this is you're dealing with two false self-concepts. The therapist might be not as false and as strong as the other, as the patients, but still they interact, and often then that's why therapy goes wrong, because the combination of the two false self-concepts doesn't create healing. It creates more ego drama. I mean, what he's saying here is that the patient is seeking doesn't want to change their self-concept, but wants some kind of improvement. They want an improvement, they want a better life, but they don't really want to change their self-concept. So wants to make, what is inherently weak and vulnerable, invulnerable, and the finite limitless. Well, it's not possible. You have to let go of that false self-concept for it to work. So usually in psychotherapy, if it stays within their egoic construct, nothing much really happens, which is why Yeshua at some point says, well, actually nothing really happens in psychotherapy. Because if you're working in the the ego, nothing really does happen. It's only when you really look at the self concept and are willing to let that go and make way for the higher self that anything of any significance has happened. And that can happen in psychotherapy, but I think a lot of the time it doesn't happen because the therapist isn't there themselves. They don't really understand this idea of a truth and illusion and the true and the false self, because they're still bought into their own false self. Okay, so happy with number 4. Number 3, sorry, onto number 3. Number 4.
Regardless of how sincere the therapist himself may be, he must want to change the patient's self-concept in some way that he believes is real. The task of therapy is one of reconciling these differences. Hopefully, both will learn to give up their original goals, for it is only in relationships that salvation can be found, or awakening. Salvation is awakening, isn't it? At the beginning, it is inevitable that patients and therapists alike accept unrealistic goals, not completely free of magical overtones. They are finally given up in their minds of both.
Okay, so what are you saying in that 4th paragraph?
Well, the task of the therapist is to see the differences and finally give up on the self-concept of the separate self. So it's trying to change the actual self-concept of the patient and get down to what the real belief is, which is our true self. So this is when awakening can be found, when they learn to give up these original goals.
Regardless of how sincere the therapist himself may be, he must want to change the patient's self-concept in some way that he believes is real. The task of therapy is one of reconciling these differences. So the therapist has a different goal from the patient. Usually they don't agree to start with. And then, the task of it is that they work together to reconcile that, and they come into alignment with the one true goal, which is to know thyself. And both of them come to know themselves, their true selves, more fully and completely through that relationship. So the healer, the therapist, is also healed through the patient. But he says at the beginning, it's inevitable that both of them will have unrealistic goals with magical overtones. In other words, the magic is, well, I don't really want to change my self-concept, but I want to fix the problem. And I'm looking for some kind of magical solution to do that. And the task of the therapy is to help both the patient and the therapist to give up those illusions and the magic in their minds. So that's the process. He's introducing it. He's saying this is where it starts. That it starts off with the patient not really knowing, wanting to change, to have an improvement, but not really wanting to have any fundamental change. The therapist might be in a similar position, and they have to kind of work through all that to get to a point where they both accept the one solution that this course proposes, which is we'll give up the false self, give up the ego, and accept the true self or the Christ into your mind, which is one self. So they would then accept that they're not really separate, they're one. Okay, so that's the introduction. Got about half an hour maybe. So if you want to carry on, we can do the next 4 paragraphs probably in half an hour. And then we'll call it there, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the next subsection, which is the limits on psychotherapy. So the limits on psychotherapy, 4 paragraphs. If you want to read that first paragraph, please.
Yet the ideal outcome is rarely achieved. Therapy begins with the realization that healing is of the mind. And in psychotherapy, those have come together who already believe this. It may be they will not get much further, for no one learns beyond his own readiness. Yet levels of readiness change, and then therapist or patient has reached the next one. There will be a relationship held out to them that meets the changing need. Perhaps they will come together again and advance in the same relationship, making it holier. Or perhaps each of them will enter into another commitment. Be assured of this, each will progress. Retrogression is temporary. The overall direction is one of progress toward the truth. So it's saying that the ideal outcome is rarely achieved. The therapy begins with the realization that the healing of the mind. So so it's the levels of readiness change when therapist or patient has reached the next one. Well, it's when they both realize and move to the next level, where the true healing is. Yeah. So the overall direction is one of progress toward the truth rather than the small self.
Yeah. So they might go their separate ways. They learn what they can from each other. They go their separate ways, or they enter into a deeper relationship, advance in the same relationship, making it holier. Be assured of this, each will progress. Retrogression is temporary. Overall direction is one of progress toward the truth. So psychotherapy is really trying to find the truth. So it's part of the hero's journey of an awakening to yourself, and it's healing. So if you're engaging in it, even if it's not ideal, as it says, you're heading in the right direction. So psychotherapy, although it might not be the ultimate answer, it can certainly help someone. John said, well, I found it very helpful to do it, and it sort of took him in the right direction, and then maybe that direction then later on in his life manifested in the Course. He became interested in A Course in Miracles. So it's all moving in a positive direction. That's what he's saying, and they're going to be just different levels of readiness for patient and therapist. And so sometimes the relationship reaches its close. It's like, okay, I've learned as much as I can from this person at this time, or it can deepen, and both can go deeper. And then it becomes more like it's a student-teacher relationship, isn't it? That might evolve into, well, no longer patient and psychotherapist. It's more like student and teacher. All right, so number 2, psychotherapy itself cannot be creative.
Psychotherapy itself cannot be creative. This is one of the errors which the ego fosters, that it is capable of true change and therefore of true creativity. When we speak of the saving illusion or the final dream, this is not what we mean, but here it's the ego's last defense. Resistance is its way of looking at things, its interpretation of progress and growth. These interpretations will be wrong, of necessity because they are delusional. The changes the ego seeks to make are not really changes. They are but deeper shadows, or perhaps different cloud patterns. Yet what is made of nothingness cannot be called new or different. Illusions are illusions, truth is truth.
So what's he saying here?
It's talking about at how the ego fosters true change, but it's like a true creativity. It's
not capable of true creative. So true creativity is going back to God, the creator, the source. It's when we find our higher self and we go into that
self
deeply.
I thought it was being genius. Yeah. And staying
that's
in
true
ego.
creativity. But the ego cannot be creative. Psychotherapy itself cannot be creative. All it can do is reveal what was already there. True psychotherapy will reveal the self that was buried under the delusions, but it was always there and it gets revealed. When we speak of the saving illusion or the final dream, this is not what we mean. Here is the ego's last defense. Resistance is its way of looking at things, its interpretation of progress and growth. So it's going to, the ego will try and reinterpret your experience of psychotherapy in a way that is actually resisting any true awakening. So it will try and reinterpret any positive change and hijack it and say, oh, well actually now, this is going to make it's going to strengthen my self-concept. Now I'm a better version of myself. That's what personal growth does to a large extent. Now I'll become a better version of me. When I've done these things and I've achieved these things and I have these things, I'll be a better version of me. And the ego buys into that. And any genuine changes in the direction of the true self are then reinterpreted by the ego as, oh, well, this is just bolstering my separate self here. And so, of course, these are delusional attempts. These are not really changes, they're just deeper shadows, perhaps different cloud patterns. It's all illusion. Just, okay, well, let's rearrange the clouds then, or rearrange the shadows, or rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic is quite a good way of looking. Because it's all going down. The ego's a thought system of death and destruction. So what does it make a difference if you rearrange its patterns? As he says, what is made of nothingness cannot be called new or different. Illusions are illusions and truth is truth. So true psychotherapy just reveals the true self. It's totally in alignment. True psychotherapy would be following the Course's teachings and not making exceptions. So the true psychotherapist would be an advanced teacher of God. As he's and teach it as the Course as he's teaching, not seek to do their own version of it, or their own interpretations. And there have been some psychologists, psychiatrists who have read the Course and they found it very helpful. It's still the minority, of course, but there are those sort of more enlightened ones who have read this and gone, wow, this is actually really, deep stuff. I found it interesting, when I've chatted like my psychiatrist friend, and Deborah's got a friend who's into Jungian psychology. She's got a master's or something in psychology. And you can have a conversation with them on their level because you actually have an advanced training in psychotherapy having done the course. Because the concepts that the Course talks about are in advanced psychotherapy, like especially Jungian psychotherapy. They talk about the shadow and the projections of the shadow, and then reinterpreting those. And well, that's all just Course that's classic course teaching. So really what he's saying with the psychotherapy supplement is that the course, if you study it and apply it, is advanced psychotherapy. And he's just framing it now. The supplement is to say, okay, well, let's just look at this from the perspective of psychotherapy and get you to understand what this course is within that perspective. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments on number 2?
No, that's good.
Okay. So number 3.
Resistance, as defined here, can be characteristic of a therapist as well as of a patient. Either way, it sets a limit on psychotherapy because it restricts its aims. Nor can the Holy Spirit fight against the intrusions of the ego on the therapeutic process. But he will wait, and his patience is infinite. His goal is wholly undivided always. Whatever resolutions their patient and therapist reach in connection with their own divergent goals, they cannot become completely reconciled as one until they join with his. Only then is all conflict over, for only then can there be certainty.
Okay, so what's he saying in that one?
It's about the resistance. So it can be in the therapist and the patient, because it can limit the psychotherapy because it restricts. And the Holy Spirit can't fight against the intrusions of the ego on the therapeutic process. He will wait, and his patience is infinite. Well, it just can't be reconciled until they both join with the source.
The Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit.
Well,
yeah.
Holy Spirit's remembrance of perfect love.
Oh,
So
yeah.
when they both remember that, they remember perfect love, they remember unconditional love, then all disagreement is over. Then complete reconciliation has come. So their minds join as one in that awareness. Patient and therapist become one, which is the goal of psychotherapy. That they cease to become separate identities in their own minds. They join as one, they merge as one, and both are healed as one. And the Holy Spirit guides that. Only then is all conflict over, for only then can there be certainty. Yeah, so resistance can come in the patient as well as the therapist. Either way, it sets a limit on psychotherapy because it restricts its aims. But he will wait. So the Holy Spirit doesn't fight the intrusions of the ego, but simply waits, and his patience is infinite. His goal is wholly undivided always. Whenever resolutions patients and therapists reach in connection with their own divergent goals, they cannot become completely reconciled as one until they join with his. Only then is all conflict over. Yeah. So they're not saying anything different. The psychotherapy supplement is not saying anything that the course isn't saying. It's just saying within the context of the psychotherapeutic relationship between patient and healer, patient and therapist. Okay. Any other questions on number 3?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Okay. So number 4 then.
Ideally, psychotherapy is a series of holy encounters in which brothers meet to bless each other and to receive the peace of God. And this will one day come to pass for every patient on the face of this earth. For who except a patient would possibly have come here? The therapist is only a somewhat more specialized teacher of God. He learns through teaching, and the more advanced he is and the more he teaches and the more he learns. But whatever stage he is in, there are patients who need him just that way. They cannot take more than he can give for now, yet both will find sanity at last.
Yeah. So what's he saying there?
The psychotherapy is a series of holy encounters. In a way, they bless each other to receive the peace of God. And this will eventually come to every patient who's on this earth.
Yeah, the peace of
There are
perfect
different
love.
degrees of teaching. Yeah, there's different levels of.
And what he's saying is everyone's a patient. Actually, we're all patients. You know, we're all in the we're all in the asylum. So, you know, who would come here if you didn't need healing? Who except the patients could possibly have come here? Right? You came here because your mind is split. You have this illusion of a separate self, and you came here because of that, and you came here to heal that. So we're all patients, and then some patients become therapists because they advance in their learning, and they choose a profession like psychotherapy as the form of the teaching and the healing that they're going to do in this world. And he learns through teaching. The more advanced he is, the more he teaches and the more he learns. But at whatever stage he is in, there are patients who need him just that way. Cannot take more than he can give for now, yet both will find sanity at last. So saying, you know, even if the psychotherapist isn't completely enlightened, and there are very few of those, actually they can still be helpful to their patients because they can give them what the patient requires at that point. And then at a point, maybe that's not required. And then that relationship breaks apart. A good example is, you know, what happened with me and Sally. There was a point where she was learning and growing, and then there was a point where she said, "Okay, I've learned enough. I have to move on and do my own thing and become a teacher, and you know, explore my own understanding and expression of this truth that she learned." And then that's then part of what needs to happen as part of the at-one-ment process. So you can't get attached to the relationship, to the form, because it is going to change. So no, actually the whole point is the at-one-ment. You know, let that at-one-ment unfold for each person under the direction of the Holy Spirit, and you know, the true therapist would understand that and not have any personal attachment to any special relationships that you come along. All relationships in this world are temporary. So even a long-standing relationship of a therapist with his patient at some point will change, will probably come to an end, because that's just the nature of the illusion. Nothing lasts forever. Okay, so overall, if you were going to summarize the limits on psychotherapy, what would you say are the limits on psychotherapy?
Well, it's just enhancing the illusory self, really, unless they are.
It's resistance, isn't it? The limit is there's a resistance to the awakening to the true self on the part of the patient, but maybe also on the part of the therapist. So that then limits the effectiveness of the psychotherapy, because neither is really willing to entertain the possibility that their whole self-concept is false, yet, anyway. But, you know, as you progress within psychotherapy, it leads you to this understanding that this false self, the ego, is not true. It's not real. That's the final outcome of any psychotherapy. And so psychotherapy then just becomes another spiritual path, another way to the truth. So, properly perceived, psychotherapy could be seen as a spiritual path to awaken, a more modern version
it's rare.
of, another form of this.
It's rare though, isn't it?
What? That it is so perceived.
That the psychotherapists are, doing the true self rather than the illusory
Teaching the
self.
course.
Yeah, a lot of them are
Yeah,
still.
I haven't done a survey, so it'd be difficult to say. But I mean, the by and large, in the academic institutions that teach this stuff, they don't go there. They don't go into non-dual metaphysics and the world's an illusion, because that's a very radical idea. So they will focus on psychological concepts, and they have various models, and there's different frameworks, and there's different versions. There's Freud, and then there's different psychologists like Freud and Adler, and then there was someone like Viktor Frankl who came along with his logotherapy. And so they would teach those models, but typically they wouldn't teach you that, well, actually, really what you're dealing with is an illusory construct, and yourself is illusory. You don't really exist as you think you exist. That probably wouldn't fit too well in the university curriculum, I'm thinking. It's kind of radical. You're saying, well, all academia, all of the study is illusory. Actually, there's just one self that transcends all this, that makes, in fact, the entire institution illusory and irrelevant, you see. At the highest level, it's like, well, this is knowledge. I don't need anything else. I don't need to go and study for years, these various models. I just need to understand who I really am. And then there's no, the learning ends there. If I really know who I am, I don't need to study anymore, because I know, I have knowledge. So it is rare, but I think the course, what's good is I mean, and this is Jesus done this deliberately. It's kind of a bridge between these worlds. He gave the course to psychotherapists for a reason. He was trying to sort of merge this field of modern healing, psychotherapy, with the ancient, Christian mysticism and non-dual teachings that come from the East, and say, well, actually, it's all part of this one thing. Which, is healing, awakening. Okay, so all good. Any other questions on that, Elaine? Otherwise,
no, it's very good. Yeah, that was very good. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Thank you. It was really nice to practice together. I don't think I can do a session in the next couple of days, but if I get a gap, I will let you know.
Of course, yeah. No, thank you very much.
Otherwise, we'll resume probably next week.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, have a good Christmas with your family, and hopefully they come back refreshed.
Yeah.
After they'll have been fed, yes. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So thank you, Elaine.
Thank you.
As always.
Thank you. Very good session again. Very, very helpful as always. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you finding the psychotherapy?
Oh yes,
is the psychotherapy thing helpful?
It is, yes, because it's just seeing a completely different viewpoint to what we're so used to. Very different, yeah. And it is true.
I think these supplements are definitely helpful, because they give you another perspective. It's an angle that maybe you hadn't considered, particularly if you're in that world of psychotherapy. It could be very helpful. Okay, so this is all about healing, and now I can relate this to my chosen profession. And even if you don't, and you're not a patient particularly, but you understand that really that course is advanced psychotherapy. If you're doing it, it's it's psychotherapy, but taken to its ultimate level, which is to reveal the true self and do away with ego. That's what psychotherapy
which is the
should.
all-inclusive. That's the all-inclusive,
Yeah.
which is so much better incorporating,
Yeah.
the getting away from the illusory self, but you're doing it step by step without it coming too much for people. Yeah.
So this is a really self-study psychotherapy. I remember my friend, the psychiatrist, he was kind of blown away. He said, so let me just understand, you've done this all yourself. You've studied this book and you've taught yourself this. I said, yeah, pretty much. I haven't had a major teacher who I've gone, well, I haven't studied a course. I've just taken this book and I've read through it. And obviously you get guidance from other teachers and you listen to some YouTube videos.
Yeah.
It's really a self-study course. That's the point. Yeah. And he was like, wow, really? Seriously? Like, yeah. Because it kind of rocked his model, having been through the medical system. He did, obviously, he's a medical doctor and then 3 years of specialization in psychiatry, all of that study. It's like, well, actually, I didn't do any of that. And yet I'm at a higher level.
Yeah, and it's quite...
yeah. Okay.
Well,
so I must go.
Yeah. Okay. Enjoy your holiday.
All right.
Namaste.
Thanks. All right.
Okay.
Namaste.
Bye. Bye.
Okay. Speak soon.